So this is the second part of your examination. So we're going to answer now the performance task. Consider the rational function p is equal to 5,100,000 v squared minus 200,000 v plus 13,000 over 100 v squared times 1,000 v minus 25. This function is based on van der Waals equation for predicting the pressure P of a gas as a function of V at a fixed temperature. The function above models the pressure P of carbon dioxide in terms of volume V if the temperature is 500 kelvins. Now, question number 1, what are the vertical asymptotes of the function? 2, horizontal asymptote. The 3 is the P-intercept. 4, the V-intercept. And number 5, use a table of signs or so on and so forth, and questions for the problem. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to identify the vertical asymptote. So the vertical asymptote, for us to identify it, we're just going to equate the denominator. Itong sa baba lang, 100 v squared times 1000 v minus 25 is equal to 0. So the first thing we're going to do next is to answer this. To solve for v, we're just going to equate each factor with 0. So 100 v squared is equal to 0. Ito muna. Tapos ito, 1000 v minus 25 is equal to 0. Next is, after equating it to 0, we're going to solve now. So ito, we're just going to divide first by 100 para matira na lang is v squared. So v squared is equal to 0. So paano kukunin yung squared? So square root. So square root v is equal to 0. So the first vertical asymptote is v is equal to 0. The second vertical asymptote is this one. So 1000 v, kailangan na nating ilipat doon ng walang v. So, ilipat mo sa 25, magiging positive siya kasi negative. Next, yes, divide both sides by 1000. So, divide mo by 1000. So, cancel. V is equal to 25 over 100, or that's 0.025. So, that's the answer. So, next is, we're going to look for the horizontal asymptote. So these are the vertical asymptotes. We're going to look now for the horizontal asymptote. As you remember, in looking for the horizontal asymptote, may mga rules. These are the rules. So the rules is you're going to look for n and m. So Cn is the degree of the numerator, while the m is the degree of the denominator. So degree dito is ang pinakamataas na exponent. So the numerator, as you could see, ang degree dyan is 2. The degree is 2 because the highest exponent is 2. Next, sa denominator naman, n is equal to 2m. M is the degree of the denominator. So, as you could see, hindi pa to siya, you're not going to answer 2 kasi nga kailangan pa ito in times. So, kung i-times mo siya dito sa 1000v, itong 100v squared, ang sagot niyan is 1 million or 100,000 v cube. Ibig sabihin, dahil v cube siya, ang m is the exponent sa baba, the exponent is 3. So, m, we're going to identify which is greater. So, mas malaki si m. So, therefore, the symbol is less than. Si n less than kay m. So, what is the horizontal asymptote? Kapag si n less than kay m, n less than kay m, then the horizontal asymptote is y is equal to 0. The horizontal asymptote now is y equals to 0. Or, because we did not use y in here, so that's p is equal to 0, where p means the pressure. So in this one, kailangan natin i-graph to. So this is the Cartesian plane. Our first vertical asymptote is v is equal to 0 at saka v, and the second one is v is equal to 0.025. So if we're going to graph that in here, so v is equal to 0 at saka v is equal to 0.025. This is v, this is p. Diba si y-axis is for p, tapos si x is for the volume. So the first vertical asymptote is v is equal to 0. So ito siyang v equal to 0. So ito siya si first vertical asymptote. Next is 0.025. 0.025, so ibig sabihin dikit siya masyado sa 0. However, in this one, we're just going to consider ilayo-layo lang natin kaunti so that it will be easier to understand. And we're just going to write 0.025 so that to 0 so that it would be easier. This is 1, this is 2, negative 1, negative 1, 1. So these are the vertical asymptotes. Next is the horizontal asymptote. Our horizontal asymptote is P is equal to 0. So P is equal to 0. So P, dito sa P, saan sa 0? Nandito. So this is the horizontal asymptote. Next, so we now graph the vertical asymptote, horizontal asymptote. We need that in here in number 1, question number 1. Next, what are the p-intercepts of the function? The p-intercept of the function is you're going to let v be equal to 0. Tapos sa p-intercept naman, you're going to let the pressure be equal to 0. To solve number 3, so v is equal to 0. So the function is p is equal to 5,100,000 v squared minus 200,000 v plus 13,000 over 100 v squared 1,000 v minus 25. So lahat ng v palitan mo lang ng 0. So in this one, so 100,000 0 squared minus 200,000, ang v magiging 0 plus 13,000 over 100 times 0 squared times mo pa sa 1,000 times 0 minus 25. Ito siya magiging 0 kasi times mo siya sa 0. Ito rin siya magiging 0 kasi 200,000 times 0 is 0 plus 13,000 over ito muna i-times 0. Kapag i-times mo ito sa 0 tapos i-times mo dito sa number, the answer is 0. So 0 minus 0 plus 13,000, that's 13,000 over 0, which is undefined. Kasi undefined siya, ibig sabihin ang p-intercept is none. There is no p-intercept. Number 4, we're going to identify now the v-intercept. So the p-intercept is none. The v-intercept is, we're going to solve it using p is equal to 0. So number 4, so none ang p-intercept. So number 4, so p is equal to 0. So ang p dito gagawin mo lang na 0. So this would be, looking at it, it would be quite difficult kasi may mga square na. So copy over 1,000 pala, 1,000 v minus 25. So ang unang mong gagawin, cross multiply, i-multiply mo siya dyan. So that's 0. Ang matira na lang it's ganito, i-times mo dito, kahit ano pang i-times mo sa 0, the answer is 0. So matira na is 5,100,000 v squared minus 200,000 v plus 13,000. So this is quite difficult kasi quadratic equation siya. So we could simply erase yung tatlong 0 so that it would be easier to solve kasi i-cancel na lang natin. I-erase mo dito tatlong 0. V squared minus tatlong 0 magiging 200 v plus 13, so it is quite easier. Kapag titingnan mo, it's quadratic equation. We could use factoring, however, that's quite difficult. So we're just going to use the quadratic formula, which is x is equals to negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So kapag ganito, ang a is yung 5,100, ang b is negative 200, ang c is 13. So, substitute mo lang dito. So, maging negative 200 plus minus b squared, which is negative 200 squared minus 4. A is 5,100 times c, which is 13, over 2 times a, which is 5,100. So, next is i-times mo to, magiging positive 200 plus minus negative 200 squared is 40,000. So, 40,000 minus, i-times mo tong tatlo, the answer is 265,200 over 10,200. As you could see, plus minus, isolve muna natin to sa loob. Ang sagot dito is negative. It would be negative 200, if I'm right, negative 200,000. So, dahil negative na dito sa loob, the answer is, di ba, walang negative, walang square root ang negative. That's an imaginary number. So, because it's imaginary number, it's none. The answer is imaginary. So, V-intercept is none kasi imaginary na siya. So, that's it. So, next, we're going to use a table of signs to determine when the function is positive or negative. So, we're going to base it in here. So, we're done with the P-intercepts and the V-intercepts, and we know that there is none. So, we'll proceed with question number 5. So, table of signs. So, there are 3 intervals. In this one, and this one. We know that we're not going to consider this because this is volume and this is the negative part of volume. So there's no negative, diba, na volume. Ito rin dito. So hinati niya ang sa tatlong interval. This one galing sa 0 patungong 0.25, tapos 0.25 to patungong 2. So the 2 intervals that we're going to have is yung from 0 to ang V 0 from 0 to 0.025 at saka from 0.25 to positive infinity. So again, galing dito patungo dyan, galing dito patungo dyan. We're going to identify values in here. So anong bang value na sa gitna ng 0 at 0.025? It could be 0.0, mas maliit sa 2, 1. Tapos dito naman, we're going to use 1. So, in this one, the value is 0.01. Dito is 1. Sorry. That's 1. So we're going to solve now the value of the function. The function is, so it's copy 200,000 V plus 13,000 over 100 V squared times 1,000 V minus 25 is equal to, ang una mong gagawin, palitan mo ang V ng 0.01. So P is equal to 5,100,000 0.01 minus 200,000 times 0.01 plus 13,000 over 100 times 0.01 squared 1,000 times 0.01 minus 25. So pinalitan mo lang lahat ng V ng 0.01 for this one to know if it is positive or negative. After, if you're going to solve this in the calculator, if you're going to type this in the calculator, the answer is The answer is negative 8.53. So, ibig sabihin negative siya dito. So, the pressure dito is negative. So, di ba walang pressure na negative? So, kung dito siya, negative ang pressure. So, this is x. Kasi nga, it's not applicable to the function. So, dito na lang pag-asa natin. Kung negative rin dito, ibig sabihin there's no answer. So, for this one, when you're going to substitute, P is equal to 1, V is equal to 1, the function, the answer for the function is, or P is equal to 50.39. Again, kapag 1, 50.39, so nandoon siya sa taas. So, the graph actually looks like this. Kasi nga, di ba, ito siya ang kanyang horizontal asymptote. Ito naman ang kanyang vertical asymptote. So, pag ganun siyang graph, excuse me for the graph. So, pag ganun ang graph. So, we're going to answer now the question. So, we have now the table. This is positive. Ibig sabihin positive siya dyan. So, we're going to answer the questions. So, the first question is, sketch the graph of the function. What do you think is the domain of the function given this context? So, given this context, so, the domain. So, titingnan mo lang dito sa x-axis. Saan pa dyan may value ang graph? Again, bawal dito. So, ibig sabihin, dito lang siya nag-positive. So, ito lang ang domain. Ito lang ang domain. Or, the domain is x such that x is between 0.025 to positive infinity, or x such that x is greater than 0.025. That's the domain. Next, estimate the significance of the vertical asymptote in practical terms. There is a vertical asymptote of V is equal to 0.25 liters. If we try to, the answer in here is ganito. What's the application of the vertical asymptote? Diba itong vertical asymptote tapos 0.025? Ibig sabihin, ang liter, bawal siya mas maliit sa 0.025 kasi as you squeeze it, diba, ito lang yung mas squeeze mo na. Kasi kapag maliit ang space, mas tataas yung pressure. Kasi nga, halimbawa kung mag-squeeze ka, di ba na mag-squeeze, habang paliit siya ng paliit, yung pressure doon sa in-squeeze mo is going to be high. Kasi kapag pataas na pataas, yung walang pressure siya. Kapag hindi mo siya ini-squeeze, yung walang pressure siya. So, habang paliit siya ng paliit, yung pressure tumataas yung pressure. So, next is, the third question is, explain the significance of the horizontal asymptote. As the volume increases, what's the purpose of the horizontal asymptote? Itong horizontal asymptote naman, ibig sabihin, habang pataas ang volume, bumababa yung pressure. Ibig sabihin nga, kapag lumalaki ang space, you don't need pressure kasi nga lumalaki ang space o hindi dikit yung mga molecules. So habang lumalaki, di ba nang lumalaki, yung lumalaki rin ang space. So mas maraming space siya. So hindi siya dikit-dikit, hindi siya masikip. So that's the application of the horizontal asymptote. So as it gets closer to 0.25, the pressure gets higher. But if the volume increases, the pressure decreases and it goes lower.